Next up is a good friend of mine. I've known him since he was a staff person in the Honorable Barack Obama's office. Honorable Will Jawando. He's an at-large council member in Montgomery County, Maryland. Thank you, Will.
Thank you, sis, and it's been a beautiful pleasure to see us grow in the fight for our people and just to watch you blossom. We were little baby staffers 15 years ago running around at CBC trying to get tickets. And we're still trying to get tickets, Angela says. So if you can help us, either one of us out, we'll see you outside after the panel. It's an honor to be here. I'm going to get right into it. I want to honor and give a shout out to my beautiful wife, Michelle Lawrence Jawando, who is in the front here. So we'll do that, because I have to do that, because I got to go home. One of my big time mentors and role models, Malcolm X, in talking about what constitutes a revolution, he said, land. Those who have it and those who don't. That's what constitutes a revolution, land. He also said that revolutions are bloody and we're scared to bleed, but I'm gonna leave that part to another talk. But let's talk about the land point. I'm gonna spend about 90 seconds on this and then talk about solutions the rest of the time. You cannot discuss black wealth without historical context. You can't discuss the fact that we have been, and this has been mentioned by some of my predecessors, Congressman Meeks, my good friend, mentioned it, some of the other panelists mentioned it, that there has been systematic public policy and terrorism combined to restrict us from owning land since the very beginning, okay? 1619, go back even before that. 1500s, you had over 500,000 Africans in this country. There have been policies in place since that point. But I'm gonna start it right around the Civil War time, because I think this is important. Black land loss, which is a term of art, refers to the loss of land ownership rights by blacks residing on or farming in the United States. So let's remember, we're talking about wealth. You can live in a home, that's important, but you can also own land or own a business. In 1861 and 1862, respectively, now this is a few years before the Civil War, just to remind you, the United States government passed the Morrill and the Homestead Acts, which provided these land grants to institutions of higher education, but also to white farmers to settle the West, right? Given for nothing or next to nothing. Now, let me remind you, I don't think I have to tell you who was not given that land, right? Because we were still enslaved in 1862. And then they were offered subsidies to develop and produce off that land, okay? And then in 1865, President Lincoln, there's a special field order issued, number 15, which is where we get our brother Spike Lee's 40 Acres and a Mule company, but this is where you get the reference to that, where this order said that freed slaves were going to be eligible to get 40 acres and the mules that helped in the war to settle in South Carolina and Georgia. Some started to do that, had everything taken back from their rice plantation owners, okay? So again, you had some progress, but then you had the clawback. The Klan developed the clawback. Then you had the Freedmen's Bureau, and this is the last historical piece I'm gonna say, that was created under President Lincoln to help former slaves access this land, get back on their feet. It was authorized for 1 year. Congress authorized it for 1 year. President Lincoln's killed. Andrew Jackson takes office. Congress reauthorizes it, he vetoes it, citing 2 reasons. We didn't want to have over-reliance of the Africans, Americans on the government. And the Northern Democrats in the time, look at the congressional record in 1866, we don't want them to become lazy. Where have we heard that before? So this isn't new, and just pardon me, I don't know, after 400 years of slavery, building this country up for nothing, how you gonna call 1 year after slavery black people lazy? Welfare queen, all that now, but you're talking about 1 year after, people literally walked off the plantation. So this has been a systemic effort, and you cannot have any solution. I'm a public policy maker, I'm working to pass laws, but unless you understand what has happened to us and what continues to happen, unless public policymakers understand it, you will not be able to convince them what is required, the lengths we must go to correct for what has happened. And so I just think that's important that we start the conversation there. Now I'm going to talk about what we're doing. I'm from Montgomery County, Maryland. We're a county right outside. Anyone from Montgomery County? All right, all right. I represent you. If your street's not fixed, see me after. I see someone waving in the back. So 1.1 million people, the largest jurisdiction in Maryland, majority people of color between Black, Latino, and Asian, but severely, severely segregated. I'm the only Black person in the county to represent all 1.1 million people on the county council. I'm only the second African American to ever represent the whole county. So that in a county that's majority people of color. And that's not a good thing. I don't want that to remain the case for much longer. We're segregated. I grew up in this county in a very low-income housing situation, in renting with my parents. They separated. We lived poor quality of life. My life changed, like many other of our speakers, when we bought a house when I went to high school, and my life changed forever. I was able to go to law school and college and work for President Obama and Nancy Pelosi and in the White House and become elected and marry a fine woman who I married up big time. And so all that was connected to the house. So when I talk to my colleagues about what do we need to do now, all the stats you've seen, renting's up, millennials, it's $2,300 average rent in my jurisdiction. Average median income is $110,000, but it's $70,000 for Blacks. Average home price, $435,000, okay? Some are much more, but that's the average. So how are we gonna enter that market into this climate? And when I talk to my colleagues, one way is leveraging public land. This is a solution you take back to all of your folks. How much land do we own in the county? A lot. Is it parking lots? How are we gonna develop it, and who are we gonna develop it to, and what deals are we gonna make when we develop the land? And without explaining that historical context, I'll have some people say, well, they own it. The business should be able to get a good profit, and we shouldn't have to put too many undue burdens on them to produce affordable housing. I say, well, who do you think they got the land from? Who gave it to them? Who gave it to their parents? Who wasn't allowed to buy it? Again, that's why this context is important, because when I say, if we're gonna give public land, I want maximum affordability. I don't want it just affordable at one level. I want it affordable at 60% of AMI, and area median income, 50, 40, and we have to push our development community to deliver that type of housing. So that leveraging public land, we've started to do that in Montgomery County, but it's an ongoing, because that's when you have the most leverage. We can't force private property owners to do anything, but if we have skin in the game, we can do it. Second big lever at the local level is zoning. Okay, we have all the land use authority and zoning authority on the county council. So if someone wants to build a high building, they want density, they want to go from 500 to 2,000 units, they're gonna have to come to us and ask for permission. And before you get that permission, your local officials, your mayors, your city council, your county council should say, you need to produce this level, this X percentage of affordability. We passed one of the first inclusionary zoning laws in the country, 15%. Most of the time, 12.5 mandated, but mostly 15% has to be affordable at 60% of average median income. Any unit, whether you're building 100 single-family homes or whether you're building a multifamily apartment building, you have to make it affordable. I gotta sit down. Okay, last thing I was gonna say. Closing costs for home ownership and down payment assistance. We have to rapidly expand those programs, because there's so many people just right on the edge that if they had a little education and they had a little help with the money, that they could overcome some of these barriers and get into home ownership. So those are three very specific things that you can do, particularly at the local level. Congress is screwed up. We got to get a new president in. Our forever president's gone for now, but we're going to get someone better in, hopefully, debates tonight. But those are things you can do at the local level right now to get Black people in homes owning land. And I appreciate y'all before Angela pulls me. God bless you.